You've seen them, right? Ants. They're literally everywhere. But have you ever really stopped to think about them? Because these tiny little societies are hiding some of biology's biggest, most fascinating secrets. And today, we're going to crack the code on one of their absolute wildest mysteries: how in the world their queen lives for so long.
So, here's the central puzzle, the one that's had scientists scratching their heads for years. You've got a queen ant and you've got a worker ant. They can come from the same colony, even the same mother. So why does the queen get to live for decades while the worker is lucky if it gets a few weeks? I mean, we're talking about a lifespan that could be hundreds, sometimes even thousands of times longer. What is going on here?
I mean, just look at this comparison. It's just wild. On one hand, you have the worker. Its life is short, it can't reproduce, and it's basically designed to work till it drops. And then you have the queen. She's a reproductive powerhouse, living for up to 30 years, just laying millions of eggs. It's hard to even believe they're from the same species, let alone the same family. And this right here is the crucial part. Genetically, they are practically identical. They have the same DNA, the same set of instructions. So think of it like this. If they both have the exact same cookbook, with the exact same recipes, how does one end up as a simple biscuit and the other as a magnificent 30-layer cake? Something else has to be deciding the outcome. And this is where the real detective work begins. Okay, so to answer that question, scientists had to go all in. They launched a full-scale investigation, diving deep inside the ant's DNA to read the entire instruction manual line by line. The research team was pretty clever about this. They picked two really interesting species to study. First, the Florida carpenter ant, which has a very traditional, straightforward social structure, with one queen calling all the shots. But then they also studied the Indian jumping ant, and this species is amazing. When a queen dies, the workers can actually duel each other to become the next reproductive, a sort of pseudo-queen. It's a perfect natural experiment, just waiting to be explored. So the mission was clear: sequence the entire genetic makeup of both of these species. Then, compare the genomes of the different castes, the workers versus the queens. The hope was that somewhere in all that data, they'd find the exact molecular triggers, the little light switches, that determine if an ant lives for a few weeks or for a few decades. And what they started finding, well, it began to unravel the whole mystery. It turns out the clues weren't hidden in some special queen gene. No, the secret was all about which genes were being turned on and which were being turned off. Okay, first, let's meet one of the key players in this story. It's an enzyme called telomerase. Now, the easiest way to think about it is to picture the little plastic tips on your shoelaces, the ones that keep them from unraveling. Telomerase does something really similar for our DNA. It puts a protective cap on the ends of our chromosomes, and every time a cell divides, that protection is vital. Generally, more protection is strongly linked to a longer life. And the second key player is a family of proteins you may have heard of, sirtuins. You can think of these guys as the master maintenance crew for your cells. They're in charge of managing stress, repairing damage, and just keeping everything running smoothly. Trust me, in the world of aging research, these proteins are total rock stars. And this led them to the first huge discovery. In the long-lived queens, the researchers found that the genes responsible for making both telomerase and sirtuins were highly active. It's like the queens found the volume dial on their own internal anti-aging system and just cranked it all the way to max. This quote from the research paper says it all. This upregulation, which is really just a fancy way of saying turning up the volume, isn't just a coincidence. The researchers say it provides a direct clue to their incredible lifespan. This is the smoking gun. They don't have different genes. They are just using their shared genes in a profoundly different way. Okay, so we know which genes are getting turned up, but that just leads to the next big question, right? How does the ant's body know which dials to turn? And that question takes us from the world of genetics to the absolutely fascinating field of epigenetics. I absolutely love this analogy. If you think of your DNA as a giant instruction manual, epigenetics is like all the sticky notes, the bookmarks, and the highlighter marks. It doesn't change the words printed in the book, but it tells the cell which sentences are super important right now and which chapters to skip entirely. And here's the real kicker. In ants, things like what they eat and their social environment are what actually write those notes. That means the world around them can directly change how their genes are read. So the study found these specific epigenetic markers, Things with really complicated names like microRNAs and SMYD histone methyltransferases. But what they do is act like molecular light switches. And these switches were flipped differently in queens versus workers. This is what creates the queen's blueprint, telling her body to invest in longevity and reproduction, while the worker's blueprint tells its body to prioritize hard labor and a much shorter life. But get this, it's not just about aging and how long they live. These epigenetic blueprints also shape how an ant actually behaves, controlling everything from the way its brain works to how it talks to other ants. And yup, it turns out these same epigenetic switches control behavior too. Genes related to brain function and to chemical signaling, which is basically the ant's language, were also regulated completely differently. This is why a worker instinctively acts like a worker and a queen acts like a queen. Their brains are literally wired differently for the job, all thanks to epigenetics. So when you put all of these amazing clues together, you get a really powerful conclusion. But what does solving this ant mystery actually mean for the rest of us? This is it. This is the big answer to our puzzle. An ant's destiny isn't written in the stone of its DNA, it's written in the pencil of epigenetic marks on that DNA. The queen doesn't have some special secret longevity gene. She simply has the key to turn up the volume on the powerful longevity genes that all the ants already have. The impact of a discovery like this is huge. First, it pretty much solves the age-old mystery of ant castes. Done. Second, it establishes ants as a fantastic new model for scientists to study epigenetics, aging, and even social behavior. And third, it unlocks clues that could be incredibly important, far, far beyond the anthill. And this all brings us to one final, really provocative thought. If an ant can so fundamentally change its own lifespan and its entire purpose, not by changing its DNA, but simply by changing how that DNA is read, what does that imply for us? It suggests our own genetic fate might be far more flexible than we ever imagined. The secrets of the queen ant could, one day, help us learn how to rewrite our own story of aging.